In this video, I want to have a very quick overview on the difference between place linked and placed embedded in Photoshop. I get asked on a very regular basis, what's the difference between the two? And really, it depends on what document you're using and how you're using your files. So let's go ahead and get started on talking about what the difference in these two are. Now this video I'm going to keep very short and very precise so not to confuse anyone, and we're just going to touch on very key points for each option in Photoshop. So let's go up to File and choose Placed Embedded. Once you open this and it has the Placed Embedded, you can search anywhere on your desktop or your externals for the item that you need. So all you need to do is just click and search. Once you have found your item, just go ahead and you can double click that or choose Placed, and that will bring this into Photoshop. Once I hit enter, you will see that it has my boundary box or my bounding boxes around it, and you can look over in your layer panel and you will see the Smart Object option applied to that layer. So let's just double click this and we're going to type embedded just so we can tell and make sure we have the differences. So let's go ahead and add in our linked objects. So let's go and do the same thing, File, Place Linked, and we're going to just bring in the same one the same way. Choose OK, and now for this one you will see the linked icon, the little chain links. Let's go ahead and change this to linked, and we will just notice and keep up with the differences there. Now I want to go ahead and just minimize my Photoshop screen really quick and pull it to the side so you can see where my folder that I took my rhinos from is located. I just have that on my desktop. It could be on my external hard drive, it can be in my pictures or my documents, anywhere that I'm keeping my files, that's where that item was pulled from. So let's go ahead and maximize our screen again and talk a little bit about our linked versus embedded objects. So let's first start by talking about embedded files. Your embedded file is when you're bringing the item into Photoshop, you're keeping all of the information with it. That means that anything that happens to this file outside of Photoshop will not matter. So if I go and I lose this Rhino file outside of Photoshop, or I disconnect my external, or I accidentally delete it, it will still remain here in this Photoshop file for as long as I keep it there. And I can do anything that I need to this file within Photoshop and it will not change or affect it outside of Photoshop. So that's a really good option when using composites. If you need to use and do a lot of changes, or if you need to send the file off to friends, you will not have to worry about bringing the other files in with it or keeping a separate folder of the files. The problem with this is if you have a Photoshop document that has a ton of layers or a ton of documents or layers or objects, your file size is increasing. It's getting very large, and that can slow down your system. So on occasion you will see me choose Placed Linked, and that is because it will decrease your file size or your working file size. There are disadvantages to using Placed Linked though. So let's go ahead and discuss those disadvantages, because I feel like the Placed Linked option is the more important thing to talk about with these two options. Now before I talk about the Placed Linked, I want to go ahead and save this as a document. So let's go to File and Save As. It has the file name as Rhino and it's a PSD, and we are saving it in the Rhinos folder, and we're just going to choose Save. If I go ahead and minimize this screen, you will see that Rhino file appear over here in Photoshop. So when we're talking about a Placed Linked item, this is linked within Photoshop. There's no information actually in the file. All the information is left over here in the document where it came from. So if I close this down and then I come over here and I delete this layer, and let's say this happens on accident, or if I forget to send this layer with the PSD file, this is what happens when you open it in Photoshop. So let's just double click this to open this file, and you will see that it will pop up and say cannot locate linked asset, and it will ask you if you need to relink this. If you click relink, it will open up the original file or the original location where that file was. And as you can see, that is not there. So there's no way to relink this object. So we're going to hit cancel and choose OK. And now what you will see over here is a question mark next to that linked file. Now, if you look in your layer panel when you skip the linking process, if you've lost that file or deleted it, you will see that it has that red question mark appear on that linked layer. And this is just basically telling you that it's no longer linked. The only thing you can do pretty much on this file is to move it around. You can't change the size, so if we click and try to change the size, it's going to tell you you cannot because it's missing. So the only thing you can really do at this point is to reconnect the file, relocate the file, or right-click and rasterize this layer. I don't recommend this though because you don't have the information with it, so it's just really not the best file quality. If you try to increase the file size from here, it could look blurry or pixelated because you just don't have that information available. Now I went ahead and restored the Rhino to the folder, and as you can see in Photoshop, it has relinked that automatically. There wasn't anything that I needed to do besides put it back in the original folder that it was in. So I hope you understood the video. I hope it was not very confusing, and if you do have questions, feel free to ask. And that's just a really basic overview of the difference between the linked and embedded objects.